on Acast and wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Rebalance with Kamahl Santamaria.
Hi there everyone, welcome back to Rebalance. Hope you're having a good week. Probably not as good as Donald Trump though, who's been off touring the Middle East and getting the VIP treatment, making all sorts of deals. He got his own mobile McDonald's provided by the Saudis. Not even kidding on that one. And if that wasn't enough, he was also gifted a luxury Boeing 747 jumbo jet as well. I think most of us would call that not a bad week. We're going to focus on the plane, of course, which actually wasn't gifted this week, and that is part of the story. There is really a lot to unpick and to rebalance as well. Because, well, it just looks like one rich country giving a plane to a rich guy. There is reason for it, and a whole lot of obstacles to overcome as well.
Rebalance with Kamahl Santamaria.
Donald Trump is set to accept a very pricey gift from the royal family of Qatar, taking delivery of a Boeing 747 that will be used as Air Force One during his second term.
A Qatari official claims the plane is technically a gift from the country's Ministry of Defense to the Pentagon rather than a personal transaction.
Former intel officials telling NBC News such a gift could pose massive spying risks, citing gifts from foreign governments that have been bugged with listening devices in the past.
Okay, let's start with the basics. It's Qatar. Not Qatar, not Qatar, not gutter, Qatar. Like butter. Right, let's move on. Qatar is a wildly rich Middle Eastern country with a complicated sort of relationship with the United States. They're undoubtedly allies. Qatar hosts America's largest Air Force base, which it built for America. But then it also hosts offices for the Taliban and Hamas. But then those offices have had America's blessing because they've allowed for negotiations between those groups and the US. But then Qatar provides financial support to Hamas, which America doesn't like, but which has been allowed by Israel, which is America's closest ally. Did I mention it was complicated? Let's just get to the jumbo jet, shall we? As you heard, Qatar is gifting a luxury Boeing 747 for Donald Trump to use as his presidential plane, Air Force One. It's only a 12-year-old plane, compared with the current Air Force One, which is pushing 40. And Trump really, really wants it.
If we can get a 747 as a contribution to our Defense Department to use during a couple of years while they're building the other ones, I think that was a very nice gesture. Now, I could be a stupid person and say, oh, no, we don't want a free plane. We give free things out. We'll take one, too.
You'll notice Trump said, while they're building the other ones. And this is where his logic isn't entirely flawed. Boeing manufactures and kits out the presidential plane. Planes, actually, there's always two of them. And it was supposed to deliver 2 brand new ones in December last year. That's now been pushed back to 2027 or even 28, which is kind of embarrassing and a source of annoyance for the president, who was talking about an Air Force One replacement during his first term. Trump's keen to make that the story, even when he's not asked about it.
Has Qatar asked for anything in exchange for that $400 million luxury jumbo jet? And how can the American people be so sure that they will not in the future?
Well, I think what happens with the plane is that, we're very disappointed that it's taking Boeing so long to build a new Air Force One. We have an Air Force One that's 40 years old.
So on the face of it, a freebie from the Qataris would seem to solve a few problems. But actually, it's created a whole lot more. Problem number 1. Logistics and security. Air Force One is more than a plane. It's a flying White House. In a time of crisis or war or natural disaster, the country, even the world in a way, can be run from up there. It has to be safe and secure like almost nothing else. Here's John Lovett, former Obama speechwriter turned podcaster, who spent plenty of time aboard Air Force One.
They have to update it. The Air Force One isn't just a nice plane. It's one of the most sophisticated pieces of technology in the world. It would surely take years to update the communication system, the security systems, all the different military safeguards and redundancies that are required to make Air Force One the most secure and robust airplane ever built. That wouldn't take 6 months, 9. That would take literal years. It's part of why the 2 planes that Trump wants aren't ready. It takes years, and he's only going to be president for a couple more years before it's given to him.
You don't know that.
Well, sure.
In fact, aviation experts have estimated it could take more than 3 years and cost over $1 billion to retrofit the plane, which on its own is worth between $400 million and $500 million. There's just nothing cost-effective about this idea. Now, you heard one of Lovett's colleagues joking, half joking, about when Trump leaves office. The plan is that this plane would be handed over to Trump's Presidential Library Foundation at the end of his time in office, which should be at the start of 2029. It would only have had a few months of service at that point before being retired. The more likely scenario, however, is that it becomes Trump's post-presidential private palace in the sky. He already has a luxury Boeing 757 with his name emblazoned on it, but it would pale in comparison with this one. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, because problem number 2 is more immediate. Can Donald Trump even accept this plane from the Qataris? Technically, no. At least not without Congress's approval. Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 8 of the US Constitution states that
no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever, from any king, prince, or foreign state.
So that would appear to rule the plane out. The Emir of Qatar certainly comes under the banner of king, prince, or foreign state. But the Qataris are saying this plane would be donated by the Qatar Defense Force directly to the Pentagon. It's a business transaction between allies, not a gift for President Trump. We don't yet know if that little loophole is going to come into play or not. Actually, I should point out the deal hasn't even been confirmed yet by either side. However, Trump's eagerness to get his hands on the new plane has kind of given the game away. But even if it was considered a defense transaction, or Congress did approve it, there's still a big question over the ethics of the whole thing. Dan Goldman is a Democratic representative from New York's 10th Congressional District.
There is a reason that it says in the Constitution that no president can accept a gift from a foreign government, because we want to be sure that the President of the United States is always acting in the sole interest of the United States and not on behalf of a foreign country. Well, if Qatar is giving him a $400 million gift now, who knows what else they're going to give him? And there's no question that his view of Qatar and the Middle East, with UAE now backing his own crypto deal, that is shaded. And we're left here to wonder, well, is he doing this because he got $400 million Golden Palace? Or is he doing this because it's in the best interest of the United States?
Well, according to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, of course it's the latter.
And we commit ourselves to the utmost transparency, and we will continue to do that.
Do you worry that if they give us something like this, they want something in return?
Absolutely not, because they know President Trump, and they know he only works with the interests of the American public in mind.
And problem number 3. Well, it's not a problem, but it's something that needs clarifying. Again, John Lovett explains, with a lead-in from Jon Favreau, also a former Obama speechwriter turned podcaster.
Yeah, it's not like this gift just like came along as a surprise.
No, he checked it out first.
It landed near his beach club in Florida in February. He got a tour and he was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
He went on this tour of this airplane, and he used it as like a cudgel to say, where are the Boeings that were supposed to be happy? He used it as a way to hit Boeing for being slow to deliver the new Air Force Ones. But now in hindsight, you say, well, it wasn't on a layover. in Palm Beach. They flew this thing so that Donald Trump could go walk around it and see it. And yeah, he turned it into a Boeing thing. But now it was just, this was a long con. This was a long con about a gift they were going to give to Donald Trump.
So far we have questions about ethics, costs, security, necessity, undue influence. But they're all on the American side. What about the Qataris in all of this? Well, one thing I didn't mention in our very brief, very complicated introduction was this.
We've now reached 100 days since Qatar was placed under blockade, 100 days of diplomatic, social and economic adversity.
Yep, that was me back in 2017, around 3 months into what became a 3.5-year blockade of Qatar. That was done by its 3 Gulf neighbours, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Bahrain, as well as Egypt. I lived and breathed that story. In fact, that edition of our program Newsgrid was nominated for an Emmy Award. But the bizarre thing, perhaps for the uninitiated, is that none of it would have happened without the blessing of Donald Trump.
I addressed a summit of more than 50 Arab and Muslim leaders. The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. So we had a decision to make. Do we take the easy road or do we finally take a hard but necessary action? The time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding and its extremist ideology in terms of funding.
So Trump is happy to accept a luxury jet from this terrible funder of terrorism, which needed to be blockaded for 3 years to teach it a lesson. And Qatar is apparently happy to part with such a gift to a seemingly unreliable partner. The logical conclusion is that Qatar is just trying to stay in Trump's good books this time around, having been stung so badly during his first term. But not so, says Qatar's Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman bin Jassim Al Thani, in an interview with CNN's Becky Anderson.
This is a very simple government-to-government dealing when Ministry of Defense and Department of Defense are still exchanging the possibility of transferring one of our 747s-8 to be used as Air Force One.
Republicans and Democrats accusing the president of graft and Qatar of buying influence. Are you?
Why would we buy an influence in the United States? If you look just, in the last 10 years of the U.S.-Qatar relationship, Qatar has been always there for the U.S. when it's needed.
Yeah, just like Turkey was there for Qatar during those years of blockade and was given, in 2018, a luxury Boeing 747 jumbo jet. Few things are without precedent in this world, even Trump world, and nothing happens in a vacuum. Call it diplomacy, call it influence, call it common sense. I think you can just call it reality.
The Balance. Journalism without agenda.
Quite a story, isn't it? And it'll be back in one way or another, just like Greenland or Gaza or the Panama Canal will be back. We'll keep a close eye on it, of course. There is one more thing I want to mention this week, and it was a story from here in New Zealand, which I've actually written about extensively on Substack. The story was about a column written by a leading journalist here in New Zealand, and really, I've already identified one of the big problems there, journalists writing opinion pieces. This, though, went a step further, with the journalist in question referring to New Zealand's Finance Minister Nicola Willis and 5 of her female colleagues as a c***. Now, I've beeped that because, frankly, I can do without an explicit warning on my podcast, but incredibly, this usage of the C word in a national newspaper not only was allowed, it was defended by the publishers who said it was appropriate usage, and that the journalist and her editor were 2 of the foremost political writers in the country. Well, my thought was, if you are a foremost political writer, then Why do you need to stoop to something like that to get your point across? Honestly, this whole thing has blown my mind. A, that it happened. B, that there wasn't even a hint of contrition about it. And C, that these, it's ironic, isn't it? C, that these clickbaity, intentionally provocative moves by journalists end up overshadowing the actual news. It's really quite astonishing, and I would recommend that you visit my Substack. I mean, of course I would, but for this story in particular, it is at kamalsantamaria.substack.com, or you can search for the name of the Substack, which is Keeping Them Honest. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. That's it for this week's Rebalance. Comments, suggestions, rants and raves, you can email them to kamal@thebalance.website, or you can look us up on social media. The handle is @TheBalanceFeed. Thanks for listening, downloading, subscribing, or any combination of the three, and I'll talk to you again next time.
Rebalance is a production of the Balance.website and is brought to you by Acast. For more, visit shows.acast.com/rebalance.